me know when you got me. We are in the chase period, everyone.
Doing it live.
Watch your mouths. Not that I would.
Chase is dressed out very well today.
I try. Just for you, Justin. Jeffrey, you got me? Jeffrey, let me know when you
I got you.
Woohoo! Turn your audio off now. Your job is done. Everyone.
Doing it live.
Alrighty then, what's going on? Shock Therapy Live, it is Technical Tuesday, and boy howdy do we have an expensive subject to talk about today. What's going on? But it's definitely something that Justin could help us out with. Speaking of the devil.
I'm not sure if what you said means that I can afford to do it or that I'm broke because of doing it.
I think it's more so the repetition, Justin. I think that you, more than anyone I know, has been in this game for a little bit.
A little bit. Plus, I've had really good advice from a lot of people that have raced bigger things than what we do. Truppy Trucks, the Geysers have been a great help with any advice. If you guys ever see Rick or Jeff, they're amazing people. But there's a lot of people in the racing that know a lot more than we do. We do not know it all. Clearly, looking at what we've been able to do. But today's subject, thanks for tuning in by the way, is racing cost. Now, what we're going to concentrate on today is what it costs to actually go racing from the standpoint of preparing your car, or prep, what kind of work you got to throw into it so that it doesn't break during a race, and also the individual cost to take your crew of volunteers or others to races from a standpoint of hotels, food, fuel in the truck, and the entry fee when it comes to entering one of these races. So we're kind of separating these two things from a prep cost and a per race cost, and you guys can add it up. We're also going to put it together for you from a standpoint of an inexpensive prep and also a very expensive prep, because there's a big difference between those two. You can do it on a shoestring budget and hope and pray that little things don't break on you in a race, or you can do it by replacing every single thing you know on the car that is possible to replace and extend some more cost, or a lot more cost to you. But it's up to you guys from a budget standpoint which one you're going to want to do. Also, there are guys that are fully sponsored in what we do, and they are typically going to replace everything that they can possibly throw at that car because most of the parts are free. So take that into consideration when we're talking about different costs here, because these costs are not necessarily what we do. It's kind of an average of what you could do and what some people do. If you have questions, great, throw them out there. The guys behind us are going to try and get to all your questions as much as they possibly can, and I'm going to try and touch base on those also if I can too. What do you got, Chase?
George Calderon, what's up, man? We see you out there. And Dom, yes, I still have a job. Surprised you do, buddy.
Is that Dominic?
That is. He's a fairly cool taxi driver, Dominic.
Yes, he is. He's actually a really, really smart taxi driver too. All right, so let's dive into it, you guys. We're gonna have a lot of whiteboard time, okay? So, this chicken scratch. What we're looking at right here is, I want you to look at, this is prep cost that's expensive and prep cost that is cheap. We're gonna break this down on a per race mile. So this column on the left is what it costs you per race mile to race that part. So let me explain that. This top one is engine and trans. Well, what we do personally is we run our engine and trans for 2,500 race miles, and it costs us $8,000 to buy a new engine and trans. We buy that as what's called a power pack. That's an engine and trans bolted together with clutch, inner and outer primaries, wire loom, injectors, intake manifold, turbo, everything. Costs us $8,000 for a motor and trans. We run at 2,500 miles. Well, if you do the math, that is $3.20 per race mile. That's what we spend per race mile by changing this engine and trans every 2,500 miles. Now, you guys don't have to do that. Certainly, a lot of people don't. But what you're taking a chance of is to blow up a trans in a race. And if you spend 10 grand to get to that race, then you're gonna wish you put a tranny in it. So there's a lot of give and take and decisions that you have to make on what you're gonna spend here. Next line, axle CV. We run our CV. They're about $3,200 for a set. We run them for 2,000 miles. Now we run them 1,000 miles, then we take them apart and we spin the stars around so that they load and wear the backside of the star and the CV, and we run them for another 1,000 miles. So if you take that and divide it amongst race miles, 2,000 miles, that's $1.60 per race mile. Now we get into the complicated stuff. Actually, next one's complicated. Right now it's fuel. So we run race gas in our car. The reason that we run race gas is not because we need it, it's because we go to Mexico a lot. When you go to Mexico, you cannot bring your own fuel across the border, which means you have to go into Mexico and you have to buy Mexico fuel. Well, their pump gas is very unreliable and we don't take the chance. You can, however, import race gas. VP and other people, Sunoco, will bring fuel down that you can buy and they pay the import taxes on it. So we do that for Mexico reasons and we tune the car for race gas for that reason. It's not worth it to us to change the tune or anything else to run all the races that are in the United States. So we run race gas at all times. Race gas, roughly 7 miles a gallon in a race, floored, is at $10 a gallon, is $1.42 per race mile. Here's a complicated part, race prep. Now, there's lots of ways to do this. If you go back up on the top, this is the expensive prep. If you look at that, this is prepping every single thing in the car as much as you can. I'm gonna go through it real quick. For us, we replace the front hubs with bearings every single race. We also replace the upper and lower ball joint pins every single race. We throw hub bearings in the rear every race. We do new brakes, pads. We surface rotors, sometimes buy rotors. Clutch, we don't buy a brand new clutch, but we service it. And we can service a clutch with all new parts and machine work about 3 or 4 times before we have to buy a new one. Fluids, about $200 in oil filters, oil, trans, front diff, all that good stuff. Front diff is a weak spot in our car. We spend about $200 per race on that, making sure that it's perfect. Shocks, this is the cost of rebuilds. It's $125 per shock times 4 shocks. A lot of guys will do shock rebuilds every 4 races. We do it every race, obviously, because we're changing things.
Hopefully we get a discount on that.
Yeah, it is a bit of a discount. So maybe I can take this $500 off of our bill, but not off your bill. So rod ends and uniballs. Okay, this is very expensive. We don't have to change every single rod end on the car. We don't have to change every uniball, but this is about what it would cost to do them all. And we do 5 tires every single race for about $1,500. $3,700 in parts every single race is what we throw at this car. That's $11.05 per race mile. What do these things add up to? There you go. $17.27 per race mile is what we spend on this car when it comes to parts throughout the season. Well, what is a season? You guys are wondering what the average is, and Matt's actually looking at me and laughing because he's like, holy crap, how much money is that? Well, I'll show you how to cheapen it up, but that's a little bit later. What we're doing for an average is running every single race in the off-road season. For us, that's best in the desert. Martelli runs UTV championships in the Mint 400. Score runs 4 races a year in Mexico. That's a total of 12 races. Total race miles, 4,400 race miles. If you run every single race in the season, then that averages out $17.27 per race mile. Sounds like a lot. Well, let's look at how to make it cheaper. Let me do this real quick before you guys talk about any other questions. So race prep, cheap. Assuming you're doing a motor and tranny exactly as much as we are, then you still have a $3.20 per race mile cost. If you never change the engine and trans, then this is going to be a lot cheaper, but you're taking chances on things blowing up, you guys. Axles. Assume that either you're buying all new stock axles every single race, or you're doing, let's say, a set of Lone Stars or Summer Brothers and you're prepping them every single race, or you're doing what we do, which is RCV and run them 2,000 miles, you still have about $1.60 a mile. It's about the same cost no matter which way you go. Prep, this is a big difference. Now on prep, I simplified it. Over here, maybe you don't put hubs on it. Maybe you don't buy pins. Maybe you do bearings all the way around the car. You don't do brakes unless you need it. You never touch the clutch. You do fluids, but you never do the diff. You don't touch the shocks for 4 races. Rod ends, you only replace the ones that are worn out. You might see 1 or 2 per race instead of doing them all. And on tires, you only buy 2 tires per race instead of 5. That would drop the cost from $11 a mile to $4.63. On fuel, you don't run race gas, but you run pump gas. You still get 7 miles a gallon. That's 42 cents per race mile. Here's your new total, $9.87 per race mile. So that is about half of what an expensive prep would cost per race mile. Now that I've gone over prep, have you guys got any questions that relate to that before I get into individual race cost?
I was just adding up the cost of both.
You were adding it up, Darren? And what'd you come up with?
75,988.
75,000 bucks.
75,988 for the prep.
So Darren has a cool stat. If you take this expensive prep and you take all these parts that I listed over here in prep cost, and you figure that per race times 12 races, $78,000 in change is what an expensive prep is going to cost you for the year in parts. All of this is zero labor. This is you guys going home after work and doing all the work yourself.
Oh, no.
No one's on the payroll, and I'm talking Chase is not there to video you guys messing up putting hubs on the car or making stupid and rude comments while you're trying to prep your car after work.
I think you can give me this money. I don't know if I can finish the races.
That's a fact. That's really what this comes down to when it comes to an expensive prep or an inexpensive prep is what do you guys want for a finishing rate? Because you could have a bolt shear on you that you've left on the car for 6 races, and a bolt might cost you $1. Well, it ruined your race, and you might have spent $5 grand to get there. Is that worth it? So you find yourself constantly deciding or trying to juggle between spending an extra $50 on your prep and not having a problem, or chancing the problem that could cost you a full race. And that's always the juggle, you guys. It's very hard to do. Somewhere between these two, I think, is maybe the average for what most people would want to do. And actually, what I didn't say when we started this, all of these costs are strictly dealing with Pro Turbo. So UTV, Pro Turbo class, probably the most competitive class at the moment, is what we're talking about here. If you have an NA car or a non-turbo car, you're going to have less money because there's less horsepower. You're not dealing with engines or trannies so much. You can run an engine for the whole season. You can run a tranny for a little longer. You have no clutch problems. You just don't beat the car up very much. You're running a smaller tire on the car. It doesn't rip arms off and pins and ball joints and things like that. So a lot less expensive. But to go back to the beginning, while somebody drops something in the back, because the guys are actually working, is we're talking about what it costs to prep your car and go to races. And it's not that easy to go through all this stuff because there's a lot of stuff. You guys have anything before I go into the race stuff?
Nope.
Matt, you're good?
Before we go into this next fun subject, I want to know what is the most expensive race you've ever raced, Justin, as well as what's the cheapest and funnest race you've ever raced?
So we're actually going to get into that right now, and that has to do with which race you run. It has to do with how many miles you run, how many people you have to bring, how many trucks have to chase it. So the short version is Baja 1000 Peninsula Run, not a loop race, is the most expensive race you could possibly run. It's the most expensive race we've ever run, and I know it's the most expensive race for all the other classes as well. Cheapest race, if you're talking about these racing organizations, Best in the Desert score, it's going to be the shortest race that's multiple laps. It's going to be Laughlin and maybe Parker, somewhere in that range. Those are probably the easiest ones because you don't have to bring extra guys, you don't have to bring an extra truck. You can go over there and you can stay one night, maybe 2 at the most, instead of staying 3 or 4 nights in a hotel with all your guys eating everything in sight. Less money that way. So, races. I'm going to classify races in 2 versions, okay? We got a race with no chasing. That means you have 1 truck. You don't have to have 2 or 3 trucks chasing you throughout the race. Typically, hashtag no chase means it's a lap race. You're going to run, say, Laughlin is 10 18-mile laps, and you only are allowed to pit in 1 spot. So that means you can have 2 guys in a chase truck sitting in 1 spot waiting for you. You don't have something like Vegas to Reno where you have 2 trucks minimum, 2 trucks chasing you. Each truck's got 3 to 4 guys in it. Everybody has to get fed. Everybody has to stay in hotel rooms, and it's multiple days. So 2 different ones. Racing with no chasing, short race. Racing with a chase, which unfortunately we are stuck with chase all the time. It's a long race. So that's your 2 different classifications. Let's take a look at this. Chase truck, averaging 12 miles a gallon, maybe it's towing something, roughly 700 miles. So what this means is that from your home to the race is 350 miles one way. Now for us, Vegas is about 320 miles from Phoenix to Vegas. If you're in LA, it's about the same. So that means your truck is going to drive to Vegas, which covers about half the Best in the Desert races, and it's going to drive home. If it does that, you're going to spend about $175 in fuel. Next, food. Figure $15 a meal average, and let me tell you, most of the volunteers that come and help you eat a lot more than $15 per meal, because I've seen most of these fatties, and trust me, they can put it down. But what we did was we took breakfast at $10 average and dinner at $20 average, and we made it 15. This has nothing to do with drinking. You can double that if everyone's going to have a good time, so get ready for that.
Jeff.
Right. So food, $15 times 3 meals a day. Do you have 8 guys per race? Do you have 4 guys per race? Are they staying 1 night? Are they staying 2 nights? Are they staying 3 nights? We just average that out on a short race for $360 to get all your guys there, feed them, and put them in a hotel. Get them all there, feed them in hotels. Here's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to step back. I'm going to bring in Jeff Day. So Jeff Day is my navigator. You guys have heard of me talk about Jeff a lot. Here's Jeff saying hi. His nickname is Speakeasy, and you're going to realize why right now, because Jeff doesn't say much and he's fairly quiet.
But what he doesn't say, he does make up for an effort, because Jeff is our logistics man. We would all be lost.
Yeah, let me finish the introduction, Jeff. Jeff does all the logistics for the team. Logistics meaning he is taking care of all of our hotel rooms, getting all the reservations in advance. Trust me, all the teams want the best hotel room. They're trying to get there quick, or they're trying to get that done in advance, and all of a sudden you go to get a hotel room, there's nothing in town, and you got to get outside of town. We've got that. We've got entry fees. We've got tracking systems.
We've got UNR registrations. I got to keep current.
Licenses, all that stuff. So why don't you go through really quick for everybody, I don't know, the top 5 things that are involved behind the scenes has nothing to do with prepping the car.
So yeah, so like he just said, I take care of all the licenses for him and I, and that's both, that's with, Martelli doesn't, but with Best in the Desert and Score. And then with hotels, I got to book all of our hotel rooms. Usually on average, our hotels are 4 to 7 rooms, depending on how many people are going and how big the race is.
We shove 2 people per room.
Yeah, we do 2 people per room.
But I mean, you as a team could do 3 or 4 guys if you guys want to spoon, which we've seen. And I mean, Jeff, you're kind of warm at night sometimes when we've had to spoon.
We've done the king bed a few times. So. But we figure on average, like on a hotel room, we average at about $150 a night. It varies. To give you an idea, like on Vegas to Reno, the first night the rooms are a little over $150 a night, but second night they're $85, then they're back to $150. There's other races we'll go to that rooms will be $250 a night. It just kind of depends on where it's at and what's happening. And then as far as hotel rooms go, usually I have to have hotel rooms booked out far in advance. A great example would be the UTV World Championships. As soon as they announced that that was going to be in Havasu, Havasu has hotels, but not a lot of hotels, so we jumped on it immediately and rented a big 10-bedroom house that the whole team can stay in for the whole week for the race in Havasu. So a lot of this stuff, hotels and all that are booked. You really got to be booked months in advance to make sure, number one, you got rooms for all the guys, and then you're not staying in real nasty hotels. I mean, because especially with all the volunteers, that's the last thing you want to do is put a volunteer in a nasty hotel room, because they're spending a lot of time to help us do what we do.
Oh, that's a fact. And that kind of brings up a really good subject, Jeff, that I don't think there's such a thing as a race team that could function without our volunteers. I mean, every team has volunteers. There's nobody that could afford to pay every single person to come and help. And your volunteers are the lifeblood of the team. Plus, they're taking time off of their work. They could be making money. They could be spending time with their family, and or they could be working to spend time with their family. And so all of that is super important that you recognize that and really make sure that everyone that's involved in your team feels a part of it and understand what they're giving up to be there. It's and you actually organize all of our people to make sure we have the number of guys we need per truck.
Yes.
For example, we got Jason and Brian Thorne on our team. Those two are probably our #1 volunteers.
And Shane.
Haven't missed a race.
And Shane Falconbury as well. Yeah. And you know, the tried and true steady teammates that are always there, they take their vacation time to come to our races. We can't thank them enough. And if you guys are thinking about going racing, my suggestion would be make sure that all of your guys are made very well known that they're valuable, and because you're not going to go racing without them. Guarantee it. Yeah. On the board, do you have anything you want to, oh, actually, so we've talked about hotel rooms. The difference between short race, no chase, no chase. And a long race would be whether you're going to do 1 day or whether you're going to do 2 days, 3 days, or 4 days in hotels. Jeff, why don't you tell everybody about entry fees, how much different they are depending on where we're at.
Entry fees vary a lot by racing organization. Starting with Best in the Desert, their low-end entry fee for like a Laughlin race, a short race, is around $700-800. Their high-end race would be Vegas to Reno, which that one's around $1,500. You jump over to Score, and their entry fees are quite a bit higher. Low-end entry fee for like a San Felipe race is going to be the $1,500 to $1,700 range. Get up to the Baja 1000, you're going to be $3,000, $3,500. Then the other series, which is Martelli, which is just the Mint 400 and the UTV World Championships. UTV World Championships are $1,000 entry fee. Mint 400 is $3,000 to get into that one. So entry fees vary a lot by racing organization. So there's no primary reason why they do it, but that's just how they run it.
Well, you might want to pick races accordingly. You never know. You know, for some people, the races may be promoted better, and so that's better for their sponsors and maybe better for a potential sponsor in the future, and you might want to run that race. Or you might want to decide, hey, I don't want to spend the money and spend more money on a different race. It's up to you guys. Matt, you said you had a couple of good questions.
Yeah, I've got a couple good statements as well as questions.
Dr. Bertavius.
Put you on the spot, now you don't have it.
STR Tuning wants to know also about the additional cost of parts that you take on a chase truck.
Okay, so we're actually going to cover that on a different episode of our feed. The reason is that we kind of figured that our spare parts cost is kind of lumped into the team cost. So what we're not going to talk about right here is the cost of the race car, the cost of a potential pre-runner, the cost of your chase truck, the cost of the race trailer, and outfitting the chase truck, and outfitting everything when it comes to spare parts. So we're going to leave all those costs for another one of these, STR, just so you know. And anybody watching, we will give you what it will cost you to build a car on the cheap or on the expensive, depending on the class, and that's coming probably next week.
People Pew wants to know, you actually make money after the race? Are you spending $75K in fun or actual investment?
So $75,000 was just parts, and that's for a full year. If you look at the breakdown, you can do your individual race cost. There is no one making money at racing unless they are just full tilt sponsored. And even then, I doubt they're making much money. They're probably making wages and they're covering their bills, and they've got a house and a car and a truck, and they go on vacation every once in a while, but I don't think that anybody's getting rich at this, man. And you know what, anyone that is at that level with full sponsorship, I don't think you would call them getting rich. They are having fun and they're getting paid to do what they love. That's pretty much where that's at.
And they spent a lot of money to get there.
Yeah. Oh, and they spent. Yeah, it's kind of like getting education to be an anesthetist or a doctor. It might have cost you $500,000 to get there. Same thing in racing. They might have spent $250,000 losing for 3 years before they won a couple and got sponsored and actually got their bills paid.
I was laughing about that saying that you guys were quoting before the live feed started here about making $1 million racing.
So very, very old-time racer told me one thing that's very, very true, and you guys should remember this and take it to heart. The quickest way to be worth $1 million in racing is to start by being worth $2 million, because you will lose all of it right away. That's the only thing that is 100% true in anything that we're talking about with racing. But to answer STR's question, yeah, it's fun. For us, we do this for testing and fun. So we're throwing new parts on cars. You know, we spend a decent amount of money on our race program, but it ultimately is spread out over all the new parts that we develop and run on our race car first. We might have short races and break parts, but at least it's happening to us before the part is perfected and sold to our public and our customers. So that's super important to us. It's as important as going out there and being competitive and winning, that's for sure.
Well, since we have both of you guys in the same place, I think it's time to make some frenemies right now. With that being said, Jeff, this question's for you. Feel free to take it away, Justin, if you can answer it any better. What is the most organized series out of all the series we race? What series do you like dealing with as far as paperwork the most, Jeff?
The most organized is Best in the Desert.
Okay,
By
okay.
far.
From a paperwork standpoint?
Yeah, from paperwork standpoint, yeah.
What about driving standpoints? What is the funnest race series to drive in?
Wow.
Let's go for Justin.
Wow, that's a really, really hard question, man. So I like score, specifically the Baja 1000, for the notoriety, pageantry fact, also that it's the longest race, hardest race to do. So if you top 5 that's like winning other races. When it comes to like short sprint stuff, then Best in the Desert kind of has it, I think, locked up when it comes to like Laughlin is a badass race. It's full lowered. If you take your foot off the firewall anytime in that race, you're not even finishing top 10. Martelli does an amazing job on their marketing,
Yes.
and I think that they kill it from their helicopter coverage and their social media and everything to get somebody involved in the race. Then that might be the pinnacle of social media in all the races. So for 3 different reasons, I like all 3. What do you got, Matt?
It says that the mic, that's coming from Instagram though, so we just have to talk closer to the phone.
Okay.
All right, so mic issues. So I think I answered your question there, Chase, but thanks for trying to create enemies. Now Score's pissed off at me.
You did answer my last question.
Yeah.
Which one do you think is the best for marketing? Which you guys are saying
Martelli owns it for marketing.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, from a fun standpoint, I personally love doing the score races too. But part of the score races is doing all the pre-running and kind of hanging out with all the pit crew guys and doing all the, it's just a blast down
So
there.
let's that's a good segue into the rest of the race talk. So we'll get to score here in a second. If you guys follow back where we were on racing with no chasing, so short races, the least expensive race, 1 chase truck, fuel, food, no guys, 1 night, hotel, just 1 or 2 rooms for 1 day. Or so I got $600 up here, right? So that'd be 4 rooms. That's assuming basically you've got, say, 2 to 4 guys for 2 nights. That would be a short race. Entry fee, cheapest race on the calendar. We're going with that. Your per race cost is $19.35. Let's just round that up and say that's $2,000. Now, $2,000 if you bring no friends, next to no volunteers, 1 truck, you pay the cheapest entry fee, you stay the shortest amount of time. That's pretty much it. It costs $2,000.
Sounds like Darren's race.
Right? Now, what does that add up to? Well, on the short races, those are probably 180 to 250 mile races. So do the math. Let's come back to this. You can go 200 miles at $17 per race mile, or you can go 200 miles at $9.85 per race mile on a cheap prep. Let's just take that and call it $10 a race mile. So that's $2,000 in prepping parts, added to $2,000 in race entry fees. That's $4,000. That is the cheapest race, prepped the cheapest way, staying the shortest amount of time, and eating top ramen. $4,000 right there.
Yeah.
That's right.
Hot dog
And
grill.
you better pray that he didn't break anything on the car. Otherwise, I smoke the trans, there's $33,000. You rip an arm off the car, you're buying arms, hubs, axles, all that kind of stuff, there's $4,000. So you can take that $4,000, $5,000 figure and you can add $4 or $5 grand to it if you make a mistake. Or somebody comes up and wads up the bumper on your car because you're not fast enough for the class, and you're putting chassis work into the car. So all those things add up. Now that I went to cheap race, let's go to a longer race. A race with chasing. So on a long race, you're going to have 2 trucks because you're going to have multiple pits and multiple guys per truck. At least 2 days plus. 2 trucks in fuel, if you're going to chase, say, a 500-mile race, is about $850 in fuel. People, this is 8 guys, 3 days, meals, and you're never going to do this in 2 days. You're going to do it at least in 3 days.
Yeah.
You're going to have $720 when it comes to food. 8 people, 2 days, when it stays hotel rooms, $1,200. This is probably more like 3 days. Entry fee, $1,600 for Vegas to Reno. So a long race, you're looking at $4,370, and I think that's on the short side because I'm not figuring any of your guys drinking beer. I am not figuring any souvenir shops. I'm not talking about stopping by the Indian casino and having a good time. That stuff is all going to get added to that. Take that $4,370 and make that a 500-mile race at cheap prep. That's $5,000 in car cost added to your room costs, gas, food, and everything else. You're almost $10,000. Let me give you what we spent or going to spend on Vegas to Reno. We're very, very close to this $17 number because that's about how we prep our car. Times 500 miles, times Vegas to Reno money. Add those two together, Vegas to Reno, mileage, hotel, food. We're going to spend about 13,000 bucks to go to that race. And that does not count labor.
Or a finish.
Or a finish. Thank you, Chase. I think he was probably holding that the whole time. I told him what we were going to do for this feed, and he's like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to freaking stab him right in the gut. But remember, when it comes to how we race, you guys, we try to be competitive, and we definitely try to stay out of everybody's way if we're slow for some reason, but we're testing parts. That is what we do. We go pull parts off a CNC, we throw it on the car without doing anything but entering a race. So we find out exactly what is going to happen. We know what the shortcomings are. We make improvements. So that's we have a little bit different motivation in how we race than a lot of the teams do. Any questions on any of that before I talk about Mexico? All right, Mexico, score. There's 4 races: San Felipe, Baja 500, whatever the third race is called, which could be Ensenada 400, that they change it every year, and you have the Baja 1000. San Felipe is 1 loop. The Baja 500 is 1 loop. Typically, the 400 Ensenada 400 is one loop. In the past, they've done 2 or 3 loops, sometimes on a shorter race. The 1000 is always a loop, but every 4 years they do a peninsula run. So a loop would start in Ensenada and run south and over to the east coast, maybe through San Felipe, back up through the north by the border and back to Ensenada. Start and finish in Ensenada. Very easy as far as Mexico is concerned when it's a loop. When it's a peninsula run, they'll start in Ensenada and run almost down to Cabo, down to Laredo or La Paz. So the issue with running a peninsula run is that it takes 2 days to drive there, or it takes 2 days to drive back. So if you're down there to pre-run, which would be running the course in advance and marking everything for your pit strategy, your fuel, the problem spots, GPS markings, all that, you're going to run 200, 250 miles a day. It's a 1,000-mile race. It takes you 4 days to pre-run that whole thing, and you have trucks following you with fuel. You're feeding all your guys. You get down there. Now you're done. You got 2 days to drive back. Now you still have the race. Contingency, start the race the next day, 2 days to race it, and now you're at the bottom of the peninsula if you finish, and you have 2 days to drive back, which is hotels and fuel. So any peninsula run adds 6 to 7 days extra time to your cost, which is through the roof when it comes to money, fuel, and if you're paying anybody, even more. So on a rule of thumb, whatever an American race costs you, or whatever race that you race in the States costs you, you can at a minimum double that when you go and race Mexico, because the fuel, food, and rooms and other issues, besides the fact all the races in Mexico, I would say the easiest race in Mexico is twice as hard on the car as the hardest race in Best in the Desert. No doubt. I mean, we'll run Vegas to Reno and come back and we'll do a very minimal prep on the car and go run another race. We'll run a 250-mile race in San Felipe and tear the whole car apart, everything 100%, put it all back together, the most expensive prep in history, and put it back together for the next race. So roughness, rough factor, and abuse on the car will change what you do for prep, but I averaged it out so you guys can kind of take those averages, plug it into your situation and your racing, and get a heads up. You guys got any questions before I go into inexpensive racing?
Justin, this is crazy. I'm a little slow. So you mean to tell me that this is our Vegas to Reno cost, $13,000. Baja 1000, 30 grand?
Yep. I think 26,000 for the Baja 1000 is on the cheap. I think 30,000 is closer to what it really costs. And if you make that a peninsula run, you can add 6 days of cost to that. So I would say another 8,000 bucks.
That peninsula run the second time up is always better.
Yeah, when you pre-ran 1,000 miles and drive home 2 days, race 1,000 miles and drive home 2 days, you want to talk about worn out guys after the race? Wow. Everybody is just at each other's throat. It's been too long and too many miles, that's for sure. No questions, and let's go into cheap stuff. All right, cheap. And when I say cheap, I don't mean, cheap. I mean it's less expensive. How's that? You're lighting less money on fire if you do some of this stuff. So the rally class is a class Martelli's in Best in Desert, right?
Yep, Martelli and Best.
Okay, so the rally class is designed to be a pre-runner or basically a bone stock car. So take a look at the pre-runner. Basically, you can take a car that has opening doors and a stock fuel tank, and you can enter this race. I'll get you. So opening doors. Now, if you look at this one, we put a fuel cell on the bottom of it because some of this stuff is too many miles for the stock fuel tank, and we use this as a pre-runner and need some distance. But basically, if you take your bone stock car that you're going to the dunes with and you put some strong parts on it, say strong arms and axles and clean air system and radios and intercoms and seat belts and all the things that are safety related, like window nets that they require, you can enter the rally class. Now, what's it cost for you? I would say that's about half of the cheap prep. Cheap prep being $9.85 per race mile. You could probably do it for about $4 or $5. But what'll happen with that is if you run that rally class with the same car over and over, about 3 races in, you're gonna find big things breaking. Like, you're gonna bust arms off that car, you're gonna have transmissions go, you're gonna have chassis issues, you're gonna have front diffs fail and drive lines twist out of the car after you've run so many miles on the car. You're gonna have those things happen to you that are gonna cost a lot. So there's only a certain amount of time you can run a car close to stock before the whole thing is failing, and you're gonna catch up to these real numbers when it comes to prep. Outside of rally, you got AZOP, Arizona, what's it stand for? Shoot, I forget.
Arizona Off-Road Promotions.
Arizona Off-Road Promotions. All right, so smaller racing series here in Arizona, really cool races. You got Works, you've got Snore, you've got a whole bunch of other ones in the California and Nevada area. Okay, the rules are less stringent. You can run kind of a rally car in those classes. You can run a full tilt race car too, but the races are shorter. They're typically not as rough, and the competition is good and plenty to have a blast. But you're not going to have the Brandon Sims and Phil Blurtons and all those and Dustin Jones out there that are running 100 mile an hour all the time. So it's easier to compete. It might be a little bit less stress and a whole lot more fun. So those races are also going to be on the low end of prep, maybe less than this. But eventually, every single car catches up to you. So don't think that you can go running some stock cars at $4 per race mile prep fees for very long. It's going to catch up and that car's going to be broke.
What's that old famous saying, stepping over $1 to save a dime?
That's pretty good, Jace. That's one of the more bright things you've said in the last few videos. That's for sure. Hey, Matt, what do you got, man? Anything good? No good questions? All right, why don't you come over here and why don't you tell me a little bit about your race program, because the racing that you're doing has been some Best in the Desert.
Correct.
Okay, run some Best in the Desert, and you've run some of the series in California, and you've run series similar to like rally classes.
And before we do that, I did get us a live one here. How's it going, sir? Where are you at? What are you driving, and what's your question? And Matt's going to take it away.
Minnesota?
Minnesota. Also in Goodyear, Arizona. 19 Turbo S, ride the Repo van. So how many more guys do you need on a point-to-point loop?
Good question. So actually, it's more about trucks than it is about guys. So do you want to have a truck, which would be basically one pit with 2 guys? One guy is trying to lift up a dump can by himself, and one guy is trying to shake down the car. 2 guys per pit, in my opinion, is not enough. You can't do a good job with that. You can't have somebody with a fire extinguisher and do that. So in my opinion, you have to have 3 guys per pit, per truck at a minimum, and we prefer to have 4. So on a peninsula run, I've never seen a peninsula run successfully without 2 trucks. And I know a lot of races you have to have 3. So it also depends on the race course that they hand you, because if they give you a fairly easy 1,000 course, you can do it with 2 trucks. They give you a hard one, and they run you from one side of the peninsula to the other, you're going to have 3.
That answer your question there, brother? Awesome. Hey, make sure you send us your t-shirt color and size and your name and address, and Matt or I will send it out to you. I'm not going to lie, it's going to be Matt. All right, have a wonderful day, brother.
Thanks, man.
All right.
So Matt, back to like prepping and cost. You know, we've gone over our cost per mile. Where would you think that you're at in comparison when it comes to a prep? If we've got a $10 cheap and a $17 expensive, for the series that you're running, do you think you're about $4, $5, $6?
Probably in the $6 range.
Yeah.
You know, we've had twisted the drive line in the first race. You know, bent doors in the second, had them re-straightened. Lost the brake line in the third. But it's, you know, you're doing a lot more work on your own. The entry fees are actually mostly about $500. I have a lot of volunteers that just show up and help. What I've done is I've actually, most of them race, so I will put them in the car for a lap. Since they're volunteering their time, they get time in the car.
That's a good one, man. Yeah, I'll keep everybody involved.
Yep, so that's how I get through the race series. My wife races with me, so that makes it also easier.
Huge, huge. Jeff, you got anything to add on the wife and racing?
Yeah, wife and racing is a big deal. Without their support, we couldn't be doing this. I know, especially with my wife, she puts up with me being gone a lot and a lot of testing, and especially when we go down to Mexico. A lot of times she's not able to go down there the whole time, so she's just coming down for a couple of days for the race. And then while we're down there racing, we're racing, so I'm really not spending a whole lot of time with her. But I try and make it up to her later so I can keep her happy so I can keep racing.
Wife on your side make for a better racing crew and a racing team. I can attest to that because mine is badass.
I was going to say, there's 3 crew members that I can't do without. Margie Crumpton.
Margie's cool.
Mother Teresa.
Yep, Jeff's wife.
And the one and only Holy Jeanette, who
wife.
sits back at Estrada and does nothing but eats my shrimp Alfredo all day long.
Estero, actually, where that is.
Estrada, Estero, hey.
All right.
Hey, all I know is Tacos Poblano, okay? Leave me
I let
alone.
you run with that and you ruined it.
I tried.
All right. So you guys, if you don't have any more questions, I'm going to wrap this up because there's so much I can go on and on and on, and I could beat this into the ground, but there's a lot of things we didn't cover. So don't get on here and tell me, what about this? And I got the one thing you didn't talk about. I don't care. Honestly, this is an average about everything, and it hopefully can help you guys understand some of the cost involved. And if you use this on a law of averages standpoint, what's going to cost you, then you're better prepared for any of the races that you do. If you don't use any of this stuff, take what you think it costs you, double it, and then triple it, and you'll be really, really close. So if that's it, then we're out of here. Chase, you got anything?
Nothing. We lost our Facebook feed about 5 minutes ago. We're going to make sure that we get it all up on YouTube for anybody who wants to watch the whole thing.
All right.
And we'll see you at Vegas to Reno this
Vegas
weekend.
Reno's coming, man. We're super excited. We've done a ton of testing, and as we always do, so hopefully it works out really well for us. Want to wish everybody else that's in the race good luck. If you guys have any questions about any products that we have, then give us a call at 623-217-4959. If you want to buy anything, then give us a visit at our website, and that is shocktherapist.com. If we don't talk to you between now and the race, then watch our tracking on live tracking with Best in the Desert for Vegas to Reno, and we'll see you at the finish line.
You know, now that I think about it, I didn't see any cost for me in here.
Because you're fired.